The red light above camera 2 blinked on. We're live in 5, 4, 3. The host didn't even finish her countdown before sparks ignited. I'm sorry, but I won't let this go unanswered, Jasmine Crockett said, her voice sharp but composed. What you're calling religious liberty is often just selective enforcement, and you know it. Pam Bondi leaned in, her southern drawl polished, her expression fixed in a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. And what you're defending is the weaponization of faith, only when it suits your side. The audience held its breath. This wasn't just another political panel. It was primetime television coast to coast. And what was meant to be a moderated discussion on religious freedom had just detonated into something raw and unscripted. Jasmine's fingers drummed against the table. She was visibly restraining herself, carefully choosing her words. You've said on this very network that wearing a cross in court is a symbol of strength. But when a Muslim woman wears a hijab to testify, suddenly it's a distraction. Where's the freedom in that? Pam didn't blink. A courtroom represents the rule of law. It's not the place for personal statements of faith. Unless they're yours, Jasmine cut in. The moderator raised a hand, but neither woman acknowledged her. Bondi's tone shifted colder now. I spent years defending victims, Congresswoman. You want to talk about selective enforcement? Try walking a mile in my shoes. Oh, I don't have to, Jasmine shot back. Because I've walked in my mother's. And my grandmother's. And they were forced to choose between their faith and their jobs, between their beliefs and their safety. A ripple moved through the studio. You could feel it. The kind of tension that made you forget you were watching a show and not history in the making. Let's be honest, Jasmine continued, turning slightly toward the camera. This conversation isn't about faith. It's about control. It's about who gets to define morality in America, and who gets punished for not fitting inside that definition. Pam scoffed. That's rich coming from someone who voted against protections for religious institutions. I voted against letting taxpayer money fund discrimination, Pam. Oh, so you support shutting down Christian schools because they follow biblical teachings. Jasmine leaned in, eyes sharp. I support shutting down any institution, Christian, Muslim, Jewish, that denies a child an education or safety because of who they are. The host tried again, this time more forcefully. Ladies, let's refocus. This was meant to be a dialogue. It is a dialogue, Jasmine said. But it's also a reckoning. And suddenly the volume dropped. Pam Bondi paused. Her hands were clasped tightly on the table now. You think you're the only one with conviction? I've faced threats for defending my faith. For praying in public. For standing up when others stayed silent. And I respect your faith, Jasmine said, her tone softening for a brief moment. But not when it's used to silence mine. Or anyone else's. The screen split into two. Bondi, conservative stalwart with decades in public service. And Crockett, rising progressive firebrand, daughter of civil rights activists. One represented tradition. The other change. And America was watching. The studio was quiet for a beat, an electric pause that no producer could script. Then Pam Bondi leaned in, voice sharp as glass. You know what frustrates people, Congresswoman? She asked. The fact that people like you, loud, angry, always ready to blame America, somehow think you're the moral compass of the country. Jasmine didn't flinch. And people like you think morality is something you inherited, like a family heirloom passed down with your privilege. Gasps echoed through the studio. The moderator blinked, stunned, her cue cards forgotten on the table. Pam sat straighter. You want to talk about privilege? Try defending the rights of people no one wants to defend. Business owners sued for their beliefs, churches forced to close during lockdowns. You mean people who think freedom only applies to them? Jasmine's voice grew firmer. I've seen how those same churches deny people access, judge them for who they love, or how they worship. Don't wrap bigotry in scripture and call it protection. The live chat below the stream began flooding with comments. Red, blue, fire emojis. Caps lock passion from both sides. Pam inhaled, held it. This country was founded on Judeo-Christian values. Jasmine nodded. And those same founders also owned slaves. So let's not romanticize every sentence they wrote. Pam opened her mouth, but Jasmine cut in before she could speak. I'm not here to tear faith down. I'm here because I know faith. My grandfather was a preacher in East Texas. My Sunday mornings were filled with gospel and hope. But he also taught me this. If your faith doesn't make room for someone else's humanity, it's not faith. It's fear. The audience shifted, no longer just watching a political skirmish, but a moral standoff. Pam's voice dropped an octave. You're trying to paint me as some villain because I believe in biblical truth. No, Jasmine said, shaking her head. I'm painting you as someone who refuses to admit that your truth doesn't have to be everyone's truth. The moderator finally found an opening. Let's bring this back to policy. Where do you both stand on the recent Supreme Court ruling allowing religious symbols in public schools? Pam smiled, finally on familiar ground. It's a win for freedom. Our kids are being raised in a moral vacuum. A cross on a wall reminds them that values matter. Jasmine raised a brow. Which values? And whose? Because if you're okay with a cross, I assume you'd be just as fine with a crescent moon. Or a Star of David. Pam paused. That's the problem, Jasmine continued. Religious freedom only seems to apply when it mirrors your faith. The audience clapped, some cheers, some groans. But the conversation had clearly shifted again. Pam turned just slightly toward Jasmine. You think I don't respect other religions? I think you fear what you don't understand, Jasmine replied. And in that fear, you pass laws that box people out, then call it righteousness. The host cut in, a touch more assertive. Let's take a breath. We'll be back in 60 seconds. The commercial break came as a relief to the crew, but not to the guests. They sat in silence, tension vibrating in the air between them. Pam sipped water. Jasmine adjusted her mic. No one spoke, but the silence screamed. In the control room, a producer whispered, "This is going viral." The countdown ended. The studio lights flared back on. The final segment had begun. "Welcome back," the moderator said cautiously, her tone a few notches softer. Before the break, we heard strong perspectives on faith and freedom. Let's give both guests a chance to share closing thoughts. Pam Bondi went first. She straightened her notes, though she didn't need them. Her voice, now quieter, carried a rehearsed calm. I believe in the Constitution. I believe in the right of every American to express their faith openly. But I also believe our country is strongest when it's anchored in tradition. For me, that tradition includes Christian values, values that shaped my life, my service, and my sense of right and wrong. She paused, locking eyes with the camera. This isn't about silencing other religions, she said. It's about protecting the one that shaped the nation. And if we lose that foundation, I fear what replaces it. Jasmine Crockett didn't smile. She didn't shift in her seat. She waited, then spoke. You're right about one thing, Pam, she began. Faith has shaped this country. But so has struggle. So has the fight to make space for all beliefs, not just the ones that feel familiar. Her voice was calm, but layered with emotion. When I walk into a courtroom, I don't carry a Bible. I carry a Constitution. And that document doesn't belong to any one faith. It's a promise to the believer and the non-believer alike that freedom is not a privilege. It's a right. A murmur ran through the audience. Jasmine turned to the moderator. I respect Pam's convictions. But respecting someone's beliefs doesn't mean surrendering to them. That's where the line is drawn. The moderator leaned forward. So where do we go from here? Can two sides this far apart find any common ground? Jasmine took a breath. I think the common ground is this. Neither of us wants to see America lose its soul. We just disagree on what that soul looks like. Pam looked over, not combatively but curiously. Jasmine continued. The soul of this country isn't uniform. It's layered, messy, loud. It's gospel choirs and Ramadan prayers. It's Christmas lights and Hanukkah candles. It's messy, and that's what makes it beautiful. Pam didn't interrupt. You want to protect your values, Jasmine said, her voice softening. I get that. But protecting your faith should never mean erasing mine. A hush settled over the room. For the first time that evening, Pam Bondi nodded, not in agreement but in recognition. A silent acknowledgement that, for all their differences, they had both shown up, not just for a debate, but for something deeper. The moderator spoke, her voice steady now. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight you've witnessed more than a political discussion. You've seen conviction, courage, and a challenge to listen. As the camera panned out, Jasmine and Pam stood. There was no handshake, no forced smiles, but there was stillness. Respect born not from agreement, but from confrontation. Backstage, producers scrambled to clip the final exchange. The network's social feed lit up. Within minutes, headlines formed. Faith versus freedom. Crockett and Bondi ignite national conversation. No one backed down, and that's what made it powerful. A debate that went beyond politics. Later that evening, as the two women walked to their cars from opposite ends of the studio lot, both paused, briefly, unknowingly, in the same moment. Different journeys, different beliefs. But on that night, in that studio, they had reminded a divided nation of something crucial. That democracy isn't forged in agreement. It's shaped in disagreement, and the grace to face it without fear.